Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to another webinar today with 21st CCLC NTAC on servant leadership. We are taking a deep dive today into stewardship and going beyond our responsibilities and accountability in our programs as program leaders, both of staff and students and all of our stakeholders. We're going to explore what it means by stewardship and hopefully equip you with some practical tools that you can use to enhance stewardship within your programs. But first, a disclaimer.
This resource was developed in 2024 by the Nita M. Lowy 21st Century Community Learning Center's 21st CCLC, National Technical Assistance Center, NTAC, funded under a grant from the U.S. Department of Education Department and administered by Synergy Enterprises Incorporated under Cooperative Agreement Number 287E2300009 with the Department's Office of Elementary and Secondary Education. Opinions expressed herein do not necessarily reflect the position or policy of the Department, nor does mention of trade names, commercial products, or organizations imply endorsement by the Department or the federal government. This resource is in the public domain. Authorization to reproduce it in whole or in part is granted.
Great. Well, I am Brittany Stanton, and I'm a TA liaison with the NTAC team. My experience started with as a classroom teacher for about 7 years before I stepped out of the classroom and into a leadership role in an OST program. And that actually became a 21st Century Community Learning Center. And so stewardship is something that I have seen throughout my time as an educator and program leader. And I'm excited to be talking about it today with my colleague, Yana. You want to introduce yourself, Yana?
Hey, Brittany, great to be with you. I have been doing technical assistance and professional learning and serving in that role for about 4.5 years. Before that, I was a school day, after school, summer educator, project director. So I've worn many, many hats, and I'm excited to be with you all to continue the discussion of best practices in servant leadership.
Great. Well, as you are hopefully familiar, our mission here at the NTAC is that we are providing both SEA coordinators and all professionals under 21st CCLC support to help them obtain knowledge and skills that they can implement programs that engage and empower students. And we do this through a number of priority areas, such as the issues and impacts around COVID-19, supporting students' SEL needs, statutory and programmatic requirements, as well as a number of academic focus areas, things like academic recovery, STEM activities, engaging disengaged youth, financial literacy, and the list goes on. So today, we're going to talk about stewardship, and through our time together, we'll begin to understand what the role of stewardship is for leaders in particular. And then have opportunities to reflect on your use of feedback when stewarding staff, what that looks like and what that means. And we'll have an opportunity to utilize some of these strategies we'll be talking about to improve your practice. So let's talk about what exactly is stewardship. Well, we see stewardship around us in so many different ways, right? Farmers are stewards of the land and of animals, or we think of flight attendants taking care of passengers on a plane, or even a lighthouse keeper who makes sure that that light is on for ships that are out at sea. Stewardship is that act of taking care of something, right? And in our case, as 21st CCLC programs, it's taking care of your organizations and your programs, its people, and its resources. To be a good steward means that you are a trustworthy leader and you responsibly manage your programs with care. Servant leaders like you understand these responsibilities and will uphold that trust placed into them by all of your stakeholders. Good stewards are caretakers of their programs, committed to the mission, they're trustworthy, they're responsible, but even more importantly, they're accountable. And ultimately, good stewards are going to be role models for others. So there's some foundational principles behind stewardship. We've already briefly mentioned them, right, about responsibility and accountability. But servant leaders who exhibit stewardship, they act in the interest of the organizations and the teams. That's in the nature of being a servant leader, right? We're serving others. So what does this look like under stewardship? Well, leaders are taking responsibility and accountability for their programs, but also taking that authority that is placed in you as a leader with respect. So leaders are then upholding that trust placed in them. You also, as servant leaders, are working hard. You're dependable. People can count on you. You're leading by example and following the rules laid out before you to best support the needs of your programs and all of its participants. The behaviors that you exhibit are unselfish, and your team matches that energy through the model you're creating and a supportive program environment as a result. We also see that servant leaders are modeling what they want from their staff. And you've done the work to analyze those values and aligning both your personal values with your program values. We talked about values alignment in several of the other pillars that we've taken a look at through our work in servant leadership. And it happens yet again as an important component here of stewardship. Now, we talked about responsibility and accountability, and it's important to understand that they are different, but they are connected in this case. And while responsibility is task-focused, and you have that obligation to complete certain tasks, and it's an ongoing and transferable to other people, accountability is the next piece, right? People can be responsible for something, but does that also mean that they are accountable, or is there someone else that holds the accountability for it? So leaders like you can both hold responsibility, of course, but you can also delegate responsibility. And good stewards are showing responsibility by taking credit or blame for the outcomes, but accountability is focused at the outcome of that responsibility. And it means that you are taking ownership of that outcome and accepting the consequences, even if you were not the individual responsible for it. We look at our values alignment. We need to take what are our personal values, what are our program values, and where do we see an overlap. If you joined us for healing, we took a good bit of time to discuss values, identifying and aligning our values with our program values. And that will be archived on our website if you're interested in revisiting that session. But if you just take a moment, we're going to do just a real quick activity together to just pen, pencil, paper, and draw yourself a little Venn diagram and reflect back if you were with us when we did healing, or if in this moment you can take some time to just think about 3 to 5 of your personal values, things that you in your own personal outside of work life find as values, right? Take a moment to write down 3 to 5 of those personal values. Once you have those, on the other side of your Venn diagram, I want you to think about your program and you as the leader of that program. I want you to take 3 to 5 values from your programs and jot them down on that side of the Venn diagram. So now we have your values, your program values. Take a look at each side. Do you see anything that is similar? Are there places where that overlaps? If there are, go ahead and place them in the center of your Venn diagram. These are the things that we're seeing align between your personal values and your program values. This is a great exercise for anyone to do, really, but you can do it with your teams. You can do it as part of a training session or a staff development session. But we'd love to hear from you after this short amount of time and reflection on your values and your program values. If you might share with us what things you identified as aligning when it comes to values. Feel free to drop them in the chat. If you want to raise a hand or unmute, we'd love to hear from you. I know that some of the things we've already talked about, right? You might value responsibility and accountability, and that is something that you value in your personal life and your programmatic work. And so they align. But what are some other things? I see collaboration. Absolutely. What else might you have as a aligned value? Honesty. Thanks, Yana. Absolutely. Empathy. We had a whole servant leadership on empathy. Treating people with empathy and respect. Awesome. Trust, commitment to growth. These are all really wonderful values. And I can easily see how they might connect from your personal life to your program work. Being non-judgmental. Thank you so much for chiming in. Approachable. Thanks, Charlotte. Yes, we got to be approachable, right? So why is it then important for leaders to have value alignment? How is that reflective of a good steward? Well, if stewardship is about taking ownership and responsibility and accountability for your program and guiding your program towards something, right? Like that shepherd and his sheep, it helps to know where we're putting our energy into, right? That we have these values, and if we expect our staff to get behind those program values, we also have to hold those values. If we're going to steward our staff forward or steward our stakeholders forward, we have to have those shared values, right? If you're not believing in it, then there's a disconnect from the work that you're doing. And so we want to think about how this all contributes to the long-term sustainability of leadership and your programs. When we think about stewardship and sustainability, we are looking towards the future. And we are entrusted as leaders to uphold our programs and missions and help reach whatever that future goal is, right? Whatever that future that we dream of for our organizations. And none of that is possible without stewardship along the way, that guiding through to that next step, to that final product, to that grand goal that you have, right? So we're going to take a look into some strategies and how we can really help support stewardship within our own programs, how we can practice stewardship. And for the first set of strategies, I'm going to hand things over to my colleague Yana, who's going to take a dive into feedback with us today.
Hi, thanks, Brittany. One of the things I want to talk about is the importance of making sure that the way we structure and provide feedback fits into and aligns with all those values that Brittany has shared, and you all share the things that you value in terms of feedback in the chat box. So when we're giving feedback and focusing it on ways that we can support our staff to grow. Feedback shouldn't be used to punish or to make staff feel bad about themselves. Instead, it's an opportunity to learn, to reflect, and improve for the future. So I'd love for us to all be thinking about a time when you received feedback and maybe you felt uncomfortable receiving that feedback. Would think about when you had a negative experience with receiving feedback. And what we're going to now talk about is ways to provide feedback that will be much more positive experiences for your staff. And there's two approaches to feedback that I want to discuss and to practice today. And the first form of feedback that I want to introduce is the feedback loop. There are many ways to give feedback, but the feedback loop is effective because it is designed to drive change by addressing the areas for improvement from a positive place and then continuing to offer support through the improvement process. Now, the feedback loop always starts with step one, which is acknowledging common mission and values. So, once again, any feedback that we give to our staff should be coming from a place of wanting to support them and to help them build success in the values that we've already identified. So, we want to give feedback that will really reflect on our commitment to change and our commitment to improvement, to growth. We want to give feedback that is reflective of our commitment to honesty. So, giving that, being honest about what strengths are and areas for growth. So, starting any form of feedback with an acknowledgement of the common mission and values of your program, of your staff, of the work that you're doing to serve your students will really help both you and the staff member you're giving feedback to come into this conversation from the frame of mind that what we're doing is to support students and help them build skills and strategies. Now, the second step of this is where we give the feedback, where we want to phrase it and think about it in terms of addressing areas for growth. So, if there's something that you notice that the staff member needs to improve on, that's where you can talk to them about a method for growing, talk to them about it as an opportunity for growth. So, I noticed that you ask a lot of close ended questions. I think something that you can work toward is asking more open ended questions, as an example. So, we want to get our staff into a place where we are talking about growth as something positive. It's an opportunity for them to continue to improve. And while you're doing this, you want to highlight the ways that that staff member's growth will improve the conditions or the experience of students in your program. So if the staff member increases the number of open-ended questions, that will help students develop more critical thinking skills. So any improvement that we're asking from our staff should be targeted towards improving the experience of students in our program. So, the things that we want to prioritize are the ways that we can improve the way we serve our students. And then, after you have addressed those areas for growth, it's really important to always identify the strengths that the staff member brings. This is really important because it assures the staff member that you are on their team, that you recognize the contribution that they bring to your program. And it makes sure that the conversation ends on a positive note. You don't want your staff member to leave a conversation where there has been feedback, even some feedback about areas for growth, feeling really disheartened or feeling like they're doing everything in their job terribly. So by ending on that positive step of identifying that person's strengths, you really help them to see their own value and see the building of additional skills as an opportunity rather than a punishment. So we are going to return to our old friend Maria, who we have been following through this series. Now, as a reminder, Maria is the program director of the Sunshine Youth Program. She's been in that position for 2 years. And Maria recently had a visit from her state leadership for an evaluation. And because Maria has been in her position for 2 years, she thought it would be a great opportunity to get feedback from the SYP on her performance. And what she has heard from her state leadership is that while Maria has been successful in a lot of ways, her decision making process lacks transparency, and there is a lack of accountability about those decisions. So there's been some challenges with financial management and program effectiveness because Maria is not really communicating about these kinds of decisions. Now, Brittany just shared in the chat box a link to the Padlet where we have set up sections for each phase of the feedback loop. So, as we recall, there's 3 steps of the feedback loop. We would love for you in the 3 columns that we have shared. Add what you were say or do as the SCA to support your staff member, to support Maria at each level or each phase of the feedback loop. So, how would you start with the shared mission and values? What are some areas for growth? What would you say to communicate to Maria about her areas for needed growth? And finally, what are some of Maria's strengths? And you can think about those in terms of the very short paragraph that I read, or you can be thinking about the things that you value about Maria from this entire series if you have attended multiple webinars. So hopefully you will navigate to this. If you're having trouble getting to the Padlet page, that's okay. You can feel free to write your responses in the chat box and we'll make sure that they make their way in there. But we would love to hear from you. What would you say to Maria in order to highlight that we have that shared mission and vision? What are the areas for growth that you think Maria really needs to prioritize? And finally, what are some strengths that you think that Maria has that she brings into this conversation, into her work? So you can take a minute or two and either go to the website, to the Padlet, and add your responses, or if you feel more comfortable, you can just let us know in the chat box. What will you say? What would your script look like? For example, for me, when I'm looking at the shared mission and values, I would like to highlight for Maria that the purpose of the program is to really support students' academic gains. And the only ways that those can happen is if the staff feel supported and the staff are able to offer students the support they need. So it looks like one example text is, Maria, I see how passionate you are about the mission of SYP, and I really believe that you are doing a great job to support that mission. So as an example, it really highlights Maria's commitment to SYP, which we have seen in previous webinars, we have seen in previous case studies, that Maria really cares. She believes in the power of education for transforming children's lives. So she cares a lot. She cares about this mission. She believes in the mission. Now we want to think about what are potential areas for growth for Maria. As an example, I understand that there have been some challenges with financial reporting. I think with some training and support with our office, we can provide you. that we can work to improve this with you. So, highlighting what is the challenge. So, there's some issues with financial management. And then telling Maria, we can offer you the support you need to be successful in this, which is going to be really impactful for Maria when she feels supported, when she feels like she can make this area of growth and she's not kind of left on her own to try to figure it out. So that's a great example of making sure the staff member has support when they need it and doesn't feel penalized. This is all about an opportunity for growth. And finally, we always close with identifying some of the strengths. Um, so the strengths we want to end with are things that Maria is doing really well. So maybe you notice that, Maria, I noticed that you have really worked on your listening skills and you have really built strong relationships with your staff because you've been working on that element of servant leadership. So that's something you should be really proud of. What should your staff member reflect on that they've done really well, that has been really impactful on outcomes for the young people? Alrighty. Thank you, everyone. We'd love to hear from you in the chat box if you have any other ideas. But if not, I think we are about ready to move from the feedback loop to um, to uh, another approach to providing feedback. And so the next approach to feedback that I want to highlight is known as the feedback sandwich. And the feedback sandwich is another method of feedback that has three phases. But the phases are, you start with praise, something that your staff member is doing really well. Then you give a critique, well, that's where you talk about the things that the staff member needs to work on. And then you provide praise again. We always want to end on those positive feelings about what the staff member is doing well. Now, the meat of this conversation, really where your main focus will be on that critique, that feedback that the staff member needs. But the opening and closing are really what set the tone for the meeting. Now, the nice thing about the feedback sandwich is it's quite easy to implement. It has really those three phases that are very distinct. It is a great way to provide negative feedback while also keeping the tone positive and keeping your staff motivated. And that's an opportunity to highlight all the things your program, your staff member are doing well. So that positive acknowledgement is really important to a lot of people. When you are providing the feedback sandwich, there are a few things that you should keep in mind. Now, the first thing to really think about and remember is that in order to effectively give or share the feedback sandwich with your staff member, you also need to listen well. So when you're giving that feedback as the student or as the staff member, you want to listen carefully. If you don't understand something, provide questions for clarification, but really make sure that you are taking the time to understand and absorb the critique that you're facing. It's also an opportunity to tailor feedback. Now, the feedback sandwich is often used after an observation where you or another leader in your organization has done some work observing, taking note of what staff do well, what staff are still struggling with, and to build that connection over time. So, really, that is something that's going to be a great opportunity for both you and the staff member to grow and improve. You also want to provide those positive feedback snacks. It's not enough to just say you're not doing this, this, and that correctly, because staff need to feel like they're valued. Staff need to feel like they're seen for the positives, not only the negatives. And again, something that we noted in the chat box early is transparency is key. Don't lie to your staff about how they're doing. Don't lie about why you haven't completed the feedback forms this week and they're actually going to be next week. It's not really an advantageous practice that will help you to have those positive experiences. It also isn't requires a lot of collaboration because you're going to work together with your sitter or with your support in order to plan out what is this person actually going to do. How are we actually going to help them improve? And finally, follow up. This is where feedback uh, webinars can be really helpful to support leaders to write more feedback comments if that's necessary. You can also find a local or local-ish partner where you can give each other feedback on your resources. Now, there's a lot of ways that you can integrate and bring your staff into that kind of partnership process. Really exciting to be a part of rather than a burden. So now that we have talked about the feedback sandwich, I think that is going to be really helpful for us to look at an example. Alrighty, so let's look at this case study. Justine is the last person in the classroom every day. The classroom teacher has reported to you that Justine leaves the room as a mess. You observed this today, but you also saw Justine do a neat STEM project. So this is where we are ready to craft that three-part feedback sandwich. Start with the feedback, start with something positive. What is the staff member doing well? Then the meat of your sandwich is the critique. What does the staff member need to work on? And finally, you end with another positive note. What are some great things? So providing that feedback sandwich. So as an example of the feedback sandwich for Justine, we start with praise, and the praise is that STEM project you worked on with your students was so neat. So you just loved it. You thought it was amazing. Now it's time to critique. Sarah would appreciate it if you ensured that her classroom space is left tidy for the next day. So you have talked to Sarah, you've heard what the problem is, so you need to get this foreign student on board with you. And that's where kind of building that strong relationships, building the partnerships really comes in handy. And finally, the last choice is I think you did a good job with the project. You have great ideas for activities. You thought it was amazing. You thought it was so cool. It was so interesting. It wasn't something you had learned yourself. So you want to emphasize to the staff member the positive while never letting go of the medium, letting go of the critique piece, because that's where there's opportunities for staff to improve. Now, there is some space for feedback still. You could think about other types of positive feedback, and maybe there's additional pieces of negative feedback you want to provide. But generally speaking, it's going to take that context, take that look. So let's take a look at the next case study. And what we're going to ask you to do for this next study is we're going to read over it, and we would love to hear from you your own feedback sandwich for this case. So the feedback sandwich is as follows. You walk down the hall and see Xavier yelling at his class. When you arrive, you see as he's trying to get students lined up to get to the gym. Xavier is typically a very calm, cool, and collected individual. So I'd love to hear from you in the chat box. What is an essential uh, method that you would use for crafting these SMART goals? And you can unmute yourself or let us know in the chat box, whatever you prefer.
Hi. Um, my first
Divine.
piece of phrase feedback would be, "Hey Xavier, I appreciate that you aim to maintain a consistent schedule,"
Ooh,
acknowledging that he
that's a
is
great
usually on
one.
time.
Awesome. So that is something that we know is a priority, keeping on track and on time with things. Awesome. Javine, do you have an idea for a critique you would give Xavier as well?
Sure. I would just remind him that we must be mindful of our impact of our words and tone when addressing students, and letting him know that I understand that it may be difficult reining students in after activities, but I will also give suggestions like using a timer, post a schedule with pictures, or even using attention grabbers to get students' attention, and that'll combat the burnout.
Awesome. I love that. Thank you. So we do have another scenario, which I think we have like a minute for. So if you have an answer, unmute yourself or let us know in the chat box. Victoria always has something negative to say. You heard her make negative comments about other staff in the break room and about today's meeting. She's very reliable and always shows up to work. So, what could be the feedback sandwich for Veronica? We'd love to hear from you in the chat box. Or please unmute yourself. So as an example, perhaps one of the things that you could start with is praise about Veronica. I really appreciate how reliable you are. I know I can always count on you. So that's a form of praise that's going to be really valuable. Yeah, we count on you to help us, to support us, to be part of this program every single day. But the critique could be, Veronica, I heard you saying whatever you heard her say to another peer. I think that that is language that's inappropriate for the workplace, and that's not something that you should ever repeat. Um, Oh, Javine shared, I want to start by acknowledging your flexibility and consistent reliability. It's really obvious that you're committed to the program. So that's something that we want to see. Um, we want to see our staff be really committed, to really care, while also having areas for growth. So it was not the this is not the way that you expect a staff member to conduct herself in the workplace. And finally, you ended on another piece of praise. So maybe you say that, thank you for considering this. I really appreciate how hard you've worked to build whatever X, Y, and Z skills during our training session. So it could be an opportunity to remind Veronica about how much she wants to be working in a rural community that she's more familiar with. So those are the things to keep in mind as you're thinking about giving effective feedback. So with that in mind, I also want to talk about the importance of fulfilling promises. So part of stewardship includes that internal feedback structure as we took a look at two different methods. We want to make sure that our staff feel comfortable and our staff feel able to deliver on that negative feedback and continue to improve. But for us, it's really important for us to have that same openness to change, that same willingness to commit, and that same openness to feedback, whether it's positive or negative, from anyone who attends our session or visits our booth. So we can gather that information so we can learn about how much we're supporting people. So to give some examples of just what I mean by fulfill promises, it's really about keeping your word. So if you said you're going to do something, make sure you do it. And if you said you're not going to do something, then that's not something that's on your priorities list. In other ways, you want someone in marketing to be a really good supportive person And my experience has been a little bit different, but I've had some great professors that have really taught. So it is possible to have that type of pleasant relationship. We know that Henry has had more than a few of these. So we know that, I'm sorry, my words are getting mixed up. We know that Veronica is working really hard to build those relation or to have a positive effect on your program, but she needs to focus on building those relationships. And we also want to focus when we're thinking about Maria, who we've been supporting through this whole process of building those skills in her as well, of being true to her word. And that's something we've seen from her throughout this series, but something that we want to continue to build. So with that in mind, as we're thinking about the ways that we are going to really offer that positive support and really offer that um, those fulfilling those promises, I want to take a second to reflect on ourselves. And I'd love for you all to take a look at your annotation tool and look at the self reflection and let us know how well do you think that you are keeping your promises to your staff and to your students? Do you think that you pretty much always keep your promises? This is something you feel like you've nailed, or it's something that you're mostly doing, or it's something that is really an area of growth for you. You need to think about how you're going to fulfill your promises, um, and how you're going to make that a regular part of your practice. So it sounds like a lot of you feel pretty confident with that. So it sounds like we all feel like we're pretty strong on that, which is great to hear because this is one of those skills that's really essential for program leaders to be consistent on, for your staff to trust you. And because it sounds like your staff really know that they can trust you, which is really exciting, that trust has to be mutual. And that's where the importance of asking for feedback yourself. So we've talked about strategies for giving effective feedback. We also have to be open to receiving feedback from our staff. And when we're doing that, we really have to be open to ask, or really have to do the work of asking for feedback and then acting on the feedback that we receive. So you really have to be willing to go forward and ask, what am I doing well? What can I do more in order to support you more actively, to more effectively? So you have to be willing to ask the question. It's often hard for staff to maybe give you that feedback because you're their employer, you're their boss, and they feel like there's that difference in power. So staff need to feel like when you're asking, you mean it. And you need to, as you're listening to that feedback, really use active listening skills. Ask follow up questions, maybe take notes so you really have a clear understanding of what your staff are recommending or what your staff identify as your areas for growth. You want to take it to heart and also be gracious. So you want to hear it and say, okay, this means that this is an area I need to grow in. But don't take it so personally that you're hurt and offended and you're not willing to change because you're emotionally affected. So it's really finding that balance of caring what your staff say, um, but also being willing to act on it because you're still able to move forward from that. And if this is something that you need support with, don't be afraid to ask. Maybe you have staff that have really excelled in that skill. So, for example, if one of your staff members gives you the feedback that, sometimes I feel like your feedback is too abrupt and I don't feel supported, you want to maybe seek out a fellow site coordinator or a project director from another program to learn, okay, so what are your methods for giving really positive feedback? Maybe you're going to try the feedback sandwich or the feedback loop that we have discussed today. And once you have done that hard work, you want to improve. So you are forming and building on that commitment to continue to grow. You are modeling those same skills that you want your staff to to demonstrate. And now I'm going to turn it over to Brittany, and Brittany is going to talk to us a little bit and work with us a little bit about communication. So Brittany, over to you.
Thank you so much, Yana. So we're going to dive here into one more strategy for stewardship, and that's effective communication. And what we're going to do before we talk about this strategy is ask you some questions using a poll. So the poll should just pop up on your screen for you. And we really just want you to take a moment to think about, how often you're providing feedback, how often you are implementing the feedback loop, how often you are using a feedback sandwich, fulfilling your promises, asking for feedback, reflecting on your use of the strategies that we've talked about, as well as thinking about what your communication is like. Are you active? Are you inactive? Are you somewhere in the middle? The answers are anonymous. So take a second and just chime in on our poll where you fall on each of these strategies. Thank you so much. I see answers coming in. We'll give you another minute. Okay, about 30 more seconds here. All right, so taking a look at our results, thank you so much. In the background, we have David doing our poll launching for us. Thank you. So we have here, it looks like a decent percentage of you, 67% would say that you're frequently providing feedback to your team. That's great. Specifically about the feedback loop, 67% said uses sometimes. For the feedback sandwich, this is definitely more balanced than the other two questions. We have 33% using the feedback sandwich frequently and 44% using it sometimes. Fulfilling promises, 63% of you. How often are you asking for feedback yourself? 75% of you said that you are seeking feedback for yourself. And then we have 63% say that you are an active communicator. Well, that's all great. We love that feedback. So let's dive here into communication. All right, so effectively communicating can be through a variety of approaches, right? We want to be sure that we're respecting others' perspectives and coming from a mindset that's going to promote personal growth. So we need to think about a couple things, right? There's the method. So it might sound easy to just choose a method to communicate and decide how and when to do so. But think about, is that communication best in person? Is it best via text or email? Is it a phone call? Is it a meeting? Whether you're providing that feedback to the staff member or reaching out to maybe a potential partner or a school district or requesting information from families, you really have to stop and think about what's the best method of communication, what has been successful in the past with this particular person that you're reaching out to, and then always include a way for them to reply, right? So both speaking and listening are important, even in the written forms of communication, right? We can still listen in that context, even though it's not being said out loud. But these are important components for being a good communicator. We also want to make sure that our communication is something that can be understood, right? It has clarity, it has purpose. Perhaps you are announcing a schedule change, or you want to acknowledge a staff member's contributions to a successful event. We want to make sure that we're being clear in our messaging. Timeliness is important. Some messages, some communications are more urgent than others, right? So think about what is happening at or around that time. Perhaps you're telling staff that you need to cut spending on materials. That's not such great news. But you might have staff that also need to purchase supplies for an upcoming event, right? All of that's colliding at the same time. And so by saying, okay, we need to cut back on expenses, but then also spending money, is that communication timeliness, or is there a better way that you could plan out that communication so that we're not making a large purchase at the same time we're doing a budget cut, right? And thinking about, is that communication happening early enough so that people can actually plan for whatever that is. We want to be transparent. Yana mentioned transparency in another one of our strategies around feedback, right? That we don't want to sugarcoat or mask, right? We want to be honest. We want to share. It's important not to hide things from your staff, right? We don't want to hide funding challenges or staffing issues. Those are important things that people need to know. We don't want to hide things from students either, such as staff turnover. If somebody's left your program as a staff member and you try to make up excuses for the student who's inquiring, we want to try to be honest, but obviously respectful of that staff member's reason for leaving. So appropriate level of detail is key, right? We want to make sure that our stakeholders trust what we're saying and understand our actions, but we are keeping respect all the time. And then we also need to think about the things that are not words in our communication, right? The other messages that we send through our body language, the tone of our voice, right? If we're nervous or stressed about a communication that we need to send or to talk to somebody, right? If we are super stressed out and you can hear that tension in our voice or that frustration, or if our physicality is displaying some of those things, it can make our communication not effective. Whenever you are thinking about whether you're an effective communicator, when you're thinking about actually many of these strategies that we've talked about today, and earlier somebody asked in the chat, all of this is part of the Becoming a Leader Toolkit on the NTAC website. And we'll try to get a link dropped in the chat to you in a bit. But if you're interested in getting some support and additional resources around these strategies, you can check out the NTAC Becoming a Leader Toolkit. I also want to talk really quickly, part of communication, right, is it's not just that I'm talking, you're talking, I'm sending an email, you're sending an email. It is also, it's also much bigger than that, right? It's setting up systems and protocols to ensure that, particularly with your teams, that you and your teams can effectively communicate and know what the processes are and the expectations around those communications. So SOPs can be very important. Standard operating procedures. Think about, does your program have standard operating procedures, or are they written down, or do people just kind of know what to do? But these SOPs are policies, procedures, standards that are put into place formally so that smooth and effective operations can happen within your program. So things like, having procedures for how do staff request time off? How do reports need to be submitted? It includes things like attendance and receipt submission, arrival dismissal procedures, right? Everything about your program should go into standard operating procedures. So that way everybody knows how and what to do and when. And then also, if you are bringing on new staff, that you can refer them back to the standard operating procedures to help them become familiar with your program operations and the things that they need to do. It really is a piece of communication we don't necessarily think about all the time, because communicating at the forefront means I'm talking, right? You're talking, we're sharing this information, but having standard operating procedures is another great way to effectively communicate those step-by-steps that are important to running your program. And then we also want to think about scheduling and timelines, right? This can be incorporated into your SOPs. This can be part of your calendar for the year. And what I mean by timeline and scheduling is really to help set you up for success for maintaining things like data that's required, and reporting that's required, and making sure that those things are set and you have scheduled times when you're going to do those things throughout the entire year, so that you also have a staff that knows in advance going into those due dates that they have to submit X, Y, and Z by that time. Calendaring things for like partner meetings or student and family surveys or those special events. All of those things are really important to just help make sure that you are you're getting to a point where you are able to have deliverables on the data for your program. So those are strategies. We're going to take a look at a tool that you can use in addition to these strategies to help address stewardship, but it also can be used in a variety of ways. We'll talk about that a little bit here. But this tool, the Balanced Scorecard, which was developed by Dr. Kaplan of Harvard University and Dr. Norton, is a framework that you can use to measure performance. And today we're going to use this tool in addressing stewardship. So when this was originally created, it was a tool for businesses to find success as part of strategic planning. But it can be used and adapted to fit a variety of scenarios. We're going to use it today to help Maria address some stewardship issues that have come up at SYP. This tool ultimately can help translate strategic vision into actionable performance objectives to ensure that your outcomes are met. So at the center of our framework, we have our strategic vision of the program. If you're interested in learning more about strategic vision, we did talk about that in the context of servant leadership, and will be archived on our website. But the other components that we have as part of the Balanced Scorecard include the stakeholder perspective. So this is all of our stakeholders: students, families, partners. What is the rate of retention in your program? Or what's the program delivery like? What's the quality of your program? Those are things that you're going to include it in the stakeholder perspective. You have the financial perspective. This is pretty clear, right? It's about finances. So focusing on those financial practices and management and fiscal sustainability. Then we have internal perspective. So this is whenever you are looking into the quality of your own program operations, programmatic offerings, alignment between those things and your mission, alignment of the mission and the vision itself. And then finally, we have growth perspective. So this is whenever you're looking towards your staff. Are they satisfied? Is there staff turnover? What's their knowledge and skill base? Are there opportunities for professional development and training? All of that would fall into growth perspective. So the way that this works is from each of those quadrants, you will set specific objectives, specific measures for those objectives, the desired outcome of those objectives, and then activities to support and accomplish those objectives. And this can go very, very, very deep, or this could be used just kind of more on a surface level to begin to address things and then built upon over time. It's very, very flexible. And we're going to see this for ourselves today as we return to Maria and SYP, who is facing several stewardship challenges as it strives to maintain its overall program impact and sustainability. We are going to stay in our whole group today to work through this, but we'll take some time together to review the case study, to then create objectives, measures, outcomes, and activities for each of the quadrants and build out that scorecard. So if you would like to look at the case study, it is coming to you in the chat, but I will also share it on the screen. There we go. All right, so Sunshine Youth Program, we've gotten real familiar with that over the past few weeks. We know that it is a community-based organization. It's a 21st CCLC out-of-school time program for youth in a low-income neighborhood. The program focuses on academic enrichment, life skills, and community engagement. Maria, who is our program director, has been there for 2 years. She is a passionate, dedicated leader who believes in the power of education to transform lives. Recently, which we learned a little earlier today, SYP underwent an evaluation process with the SEA, revealing some stewardship challenges that threaten the program's impact and sustainability. 3 key areas that were highlighted in the feedback Maria received include community engagement and partnerships, financial management, and staff development and retention. Some of this we know from our other pillars we've taken a look at. Community engagement and partnerships. The evaluation identified challenges in building sustainable partnerships and collaborations. Limited outreach efforts and ineffective communication strategies hinder SYP's ability to mobilize community support and resources. Stakeholders expressed a desire for greater involvement and transparency from SYP in community initiatives and decision-making processes. Financial management, which we mentioned briefly earlier. So the evaluation highlighted specific concerns regarding the transparency and accountability of SYP's financial management practices. Maria and her team struggle to provide clear documentation of budget allocations and expenditures, leading to doubts about the program's fiscal responsibility. And then staff development and retention. Maria's had several challenges over the year, and even though those challenges have settled for the time being, high staff turnover rates and low morale have been significant concerns recognized and brought up in the evaluation. There's a lack of staff training, mentorship, and recognition still affecting the program. So these are our 3 big highlighted issues from the evaluation. What we have here is broken down for us, each of the quadrants, for us to take a look at objective, measure, outcome, activities, and for us to develop some of those things together today. So if you're willing to unmute or pop things in the chat, we'll keep an eye on the chat and try to add things. But let's think about some of the problems from the evaluation, and how we can develop just one objective from the stakeholder perspective. So thinking about her stakeholders, students, staff, community, what might an objective be for SYP to improve?
They could get
I think I heard somebody unmute, but it's very faint.
Sorry, I was saying that they could possibly get opinions from their stakeholders.
Okay, we could do that through a survey or interviews.
Yep.
Obviously, we want to understand here what exactly has been a contributing factor to the concerns raised around community engagement. And we kind of already set a measure within, thank you so much, Javine, for chiming in, sort of a method of measuring, right? We're going to survey and interview these stakeholders, but what exactly is that measuring, right? What are we looking for here? If we've had trouble with our community partners, they expressed issues around transparency. Some of the partnerships tried were not super successful. What we might want to measure through this process could be what was successful and what wasn't successful, right? Measuring the partnership success rate. And
I think just to ask the question, why wasn't it successful? I mean, those partners that had an issue, what were their issues? And is that something that can be addressed or corrected?
thank you so much, Charlotte. Yes, we want to find out the why, right? We can't know what went wrong. We can't assume what went wrong without asking that question, right? So that's great. We're going to ask the question. We are looking to better understand what the success rate is of our partnerships. And the outcome of all this, we hope to learn what went wrong and how we can improve. And going back to this, the Javine suggestion about, and that led us to surveying and interviewing, right? That's going to be our first activity that we're going to do to support this work. We breezed through that very quickly. If you were to implement this this tool with your stakeholders, with your team, with if you have a board of directors, if you're willing to walk through the exercise yourself, you would dedicate some more time to this. But we're going to hop over to the next quadrant, which is the financial perspective. And thinking about the issues that were raised in the evaluation around the reporting of finances, right? So I'm going to throw out here a suggested objective. We're going to create a SOP, standard operating procedure, for collecting and processing receipts. That might seem like a small objective, But to SYP, who's really struggling with that financial reporting piece, this is going to be really important to establish some procedures around each of the processes that will need to take place for financial reporting. And Maria will be responsible for a lot of this. However, the collecting and processing of receipts will also involve some responsibilities upon her staff, right? If they're doing some of the purchasing for the program. And so how are we going to then measure the this objective? What we're hoping to see is a process that works, right? But more importantly, it will solve the issues in reporting that were raised in the evaluation. So perhaps reduction of error. Again, saying that out loud, it sounds kind of small, but it's so instrumental, especially whenever we're talking about the financial practices. Very, very important. And so our overall outcome that we are looking for through this process is we want accurate financials. And so through the creation of SOPs, standard operating procedures, we also want to establish processes to support, we're talking about receipts here. So establish processes to support receipt, we call it reconciliation.
I mean, I think the other thing for me would be under outcome is that everyone's on the same page. Like there's only one way of doing something. So then there is no question.
Absolutely. Thank you so much, Charlotte. And that's going to be something that's supported through those SYPs, right? I'm doing some staff training so that everybody understands what that process is and why it's important, and things like scheduling the timeline for when things need to be submitted, and whether it's on a monthly cycle or if you need receipts at the end of the week, you know, establishing those procedures and having everybody on the same page will help success. Our internal perspective, yeah, we're breezing through this, but you would certainly take some more time within your own context. Our internal perspective is whenever we are looking at within the program. And one of the concerns that was raised was around communication, and really like that broader communication with stakeholders. So perhaps our objective here is to improve stakeholder communications. Families don't know what's going on. That's no good. Staff don't know what's going on. That's no good. We need to improve our stakeholder communications. Perhaps this is through, let's say we establish some kind of weekly highlights email for the staff, so they know here's all the things that are happening for the week, and here's who's doing what and when, and you want to make sure that staff are actually reading their emails. Well, that's great. Through several different kinds of email systems, you can check the click to open rate. Who's actually opening those emails? Doesn't mean they actually read it, but this is something that we can measure, right? We can understand if our messages are getting out there and if they are being received and if eyeballs are landing on them. The outcome that we might hope for is increased engagement. And that activity, like I mentioned, it could be, you know, scheduling weekly emails. And the last quadrant is for growth. And so one of the things that SYP has really struggled with, that staff turnover rate, and even though it's stabilized and we have a core set of staff now, how is Maria going to support them so that they can continue to be successful and stick around? What's something that we might consider as an objective to improve that area of growth? So perhaps something like increase morale. Great. I was going to say professional development, but you know what? Morale is equally as important. Maybe they're not being recognized. Maybe they don't have those positive pieces in the feedback they're receiving. Staff celebrations and culture. I love that. I'm going to put the activities, right? Because we can use celebrations to recognize staff for their contributions and their successes, asking for their opinions. So staff opinions, another activity, opinions. Maybe we do that through a survey or one-on-ones. There's probably multiple ways that you can do that. How are we going to measure increased morale? What would show us that there's been an increase to staff morale? It's kind of a hard thing to measure. We can do that through a survey, right? We're measuring through a survey, but what is the data point that we're measuring within that survey? So heard and sense of job security. Thank you, Javine. So through the survey, we want to know retention. We probably know as Maria, leader of SYP, but perhaps depending on what the questions are in that survey, if you're asking questions about retention, not sure that's entirely the route that you want to go, but it might help you better understand why people left if you didn't already know that. If you've hung out with us and Maria for the past several weeks, you might recall that we have identified those issues and addressed them. But we could ask them if they feel valued and heard. And so what we're measuring is staff feelings of sorry, reading in the chat here. Feelings of value. Feedback on sense of security. These are great suggestions. One-on-one check-ins with people. If staff become more engaging in activities, that would be our outcome, right? Increased staff engagement. That's what we ultimately want, right? That they have the skills, they have the knowledge and the confidence to be able to do what they need to do in the program and to be engaged in the program. All right, so we walked through that very quickly, but let's pop over and see. This is another suggestion. Some of them share some similarities to what we discussed, a scale of where they identify their feelings. Thank you, Ebony. So stakeholder perspective. An objective might be improve partner relationships. The measure, analyzing that program partner success rate. Our outcome would be increased involvement and transparency. And the activity that we're going to do to support this is to survey the current partners. We kind of built that out together today. For financial perspective, we talked about receipt processing. Here we have it broken down, very similar to what we discussed. We're going to establish receipt processing SOPs, standard operating procedures. We are going to measure and look for that reduction of errors during the reconciliation process. Our outcome is that we have increased accuracy in our financial reports. And the activity that is going to support all of this is, as part of those standard operating procedures, a weekly receipt reconciliation process. Then we have our internal perspective. And here we've talked a little bit already about improving stakeholder communications. Click-to-rate open emails are on a lot of those platforms. But in this case, we're thinking this is the broader community at large, right? That they know the happenings of SYP. And so the outcome that we desire is a more engaged and informed community. And we're doing that through a weekly newsletter blast. And then finally, we have growth perspective. So here, and thank you for all of you chiming in on our exercise around the growth perspective. This take is slightly different, where we want to specifically support the improved knowledge and skills of staff. And we're going to measure this through a personalized professional development plans for each staff member. The outcome that we are looking for is improved self-confidence and program facilitation. And the activities that we would use to then support this objective is to offer recurring professional development sessions for staff. So like I said, we can go really, really deep with the balanced scorecard. We did it very high level, quick today. You would spend more time utilizing this. We're using it to address stewardship issues with Maria and SYP, but you can use it in a variety of ways to support your program. If it's in strategic visioning, if it's in thinking about what is that big future of your program, you can tweak it and adjust it to fit your needs. So it's not necessarily a template, but you can adjust things and tailor it to fit your own unique needs, different situations or strategies or environments, and customize it to really fit whatever that vision and mission is, the strategy and the culture of your program. This tool is great because it can help you address those issues of stewardship that you might be seeing by providing that framework for performance measurement and alignment back to those strategic objectives. It can also help identify the areas that need to make improvements. It can help with determining those issues around communication and supporting accountability, and ultimately continuous monitoring and adaptation of your programs so that you can be successful. So using this tool is just another effective way to help manage organizations in a manner that's going to promote long-term sustainability and responsibility, which was the ultimate goal whenever they created it for businesses to find success. And at the end of the day, there is a strong element here where our programs are businesses. So check out Balanced Scorecard and tweak it to fit what you need. Now, we are closely coming on our time here today, but I wanted to take a moment before we kind of wrap up. There were some questions about whether there are handouts or resources that we could provide to you. And I mentioned the leadership toolkit that is on our website. So if you go to 21stcclcntac.org and go to our resources in the professional learning portal, there's a couple things here I want to draw your attention to. So first, there's several courses to support learning recovery. But if you scroll down right below that, we have a mini course on becoming a leader. And this is it takes an hour to complete almost. But But basically, the webinars that we've been doing around servant leadership, this is the short version where they walk you through the 10 pillars and how to utilize those pillars as a servant leader in your program. They don't go quite as in depth as what we're doing here in our webinars, but that is there for you to check out. And you can, this is a free resource. Anybody can go onto it. You can send your staff to it if you have some folks that you are thinking could also use support on developing leadership skills. And if you keep scrolling, I'm going to scroll all the way down to where we see toolkits. So the Becoming a Leader toolkit, this will download directly to your computer as a zip, and it will contain both Word documents and PDF versions. As you heard in the disclaimer, you can use all these tools for free, and you can also change them. So in the Word document, you can remove the NTAC branding and put in your own program branding. You can change the words, make it fit your need. But this toolkit contains many resources that we have talked about in the context of this whole series thus far, and there's 2 more to go. And there's specifically related to today's content information around feedback and communication and things like that. So check that out on our website. And it's there's a lot of resources in there. There's more than just the leadership as well. The Guiding Positive Student Behavior Toolkit is there. The Summer Learning, which I know we're already in the depths of summer learning right now, but check it out. And then we have the Learning Recovery Toolkit, which is a very expansive toolkit to provide you with lots of different tools for planning and implementation, literacy, math, etc. In your program. So check out 21stcclcntac.org. You're going to our resources, professional learning portal, and you'll find these things there. Now, with that said, you can also reach out directly to us at info@21stcclcntac.org. You can sign up for the NTAC Messenger, which is our newsletter. It is both on our website, but if you sign up, then it comes directly to your email. There's also, we have LinkedIn and X that you can follow us on, and the website there for you. Those QR codes you can scan, it'll take you directly to ways to connect with us there. I do want to ask that as we are wrapping up today, that you take a brief moment to provide us some feedback on the session. The link is dropped there in the chat for you. Your feedback matters. It helps us in informing the sessions that we develop and offer and the tools that we create and provide on our website. So we really want to hear from you and how you're feeling about today's session. I also wanted to share with you, if you haven't heard about it already, the 21st CCLC Summer Symposium is, oh my goodness, just around the corner, about a month away. It's going to take place in San Francisco. It is there's no registration fee for this event. We're going to be there, NTAC team will be there presenting several sessions. But it is a great place where all 21st CCLC staff, subgrantees, SEAs can come and learn from each other, connect, network, get support for things that you need in your program. So I encourage you to check it out. It'll be July 31st through August 1st. And the whole theme is about the Bridge to Excellence, and it's going to be a great time. We'll be presenting sessions on engaging disengaged youth, accelerating learning recovery, and so much more. So we hope you will check it out. If you haven't had a chance yet to fill out that survey for us, giving us some feedback on today's session, we would greatly appreciate your input. Yana, thank you so much for joining me today in Stewardship. It was great to have you.
It's always great to be with you, Brittany.
Take a few seconds here to fill out that feedback form, and be sure to tune in for our next, the 9th pillar of servant leadership, which is growth. Same time, same place, 2 weeks from today.